Look at him, eating whatever he wants, never gaining a pound. While I'm stuck with the boring special and can't lose an ounce.
How's your lunch, man?
Amazing. Yours?
So good.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Cool, buddy.
Weight loss isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that can fix your frustration with food.
So, same time next week?
No!
Definitely.
And your friends. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
Historia Canadiana is recorded on the unceded lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka First Nation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Cultural History of Canada. My name is Patrick, and with me, as always, is my co-host with the most, Mackenzie.
Yo! What is
There we go.
up, guys? Back
Just
at it
looking
again
great.
with the new episode. Love to see it.
Thank God I do interviews between the episodes, because otherwise the show would be the most inconsistent thing in podcast land.
Thank God we got like this whole thing that we do where you get actual, like you get to talk to actually smart people.
So in case people
And then
don't
those
know,
same people down the line you run back into when you apply for jobs at universities.
never got a call back for that job, by the way. Not a single, not even an acknowledgement, nothing. That's part of the reason why I was delayed in this episode. I was actually applying to another job. There's a CanLit position that opened in New Brunswick, and I'm like, ooh, hello, I exist. So that's fun. Might be working in New Brunswick for a bit.
Pick me, pick me, pick me.
Yep. It's cheerleading time, self-leading. All right. So because we're on the time schedule here for once, God damn it, Mac and his business meetings or whatever. Today we'll just get right into the scheduled topic, which is Italians in Canada. Did I just break your
Jesus
brain
Christ.
with that accent?
Italians? What are you, an inglorious bastard?
No, I love it. I love Italians. What do you know about
I love
actually-
Italians. Some of my best friends are Italian.
I've been to Italy twice, okay? You don't go to a country you hate.
That's true. What were you going to ask me?
What do you know about Italians in Canada? Like,
Um,
about their history or about their influence, anything that, like,
This is going to
strikes.
be really, this is really, really bad to say. But okay, here's the thing. The first thing that comes to mind is the Fifth Family.
Is the what?
Do you not know this?
Hey, wait. Go on.
So-
Explain what it is and...
Well, in Montreal, it is what is called the Fifth Family. Like, so the Italian mob family that is in Montreal is like I can't remember their exact name.
Yeah.
I know that Really influential construction projects and the like.
I now that you mention it, yes, I know exactly. The Rizzutos.
Yeah, the Rizzutos are the Fifth Family as it stands, you know? I mean, you know, if your family's been in Montreal long enough. So my grandfather, bless his soul, is he worked in construction. He did sheetrock, right? He did a lot of contracting. He did a lot of sheetrock in the city, actually. Like, there's a lot of buildings, if you see the sheetrocking, that's him. And there would be times when he'd be contacted, like there was a job offer bid going on, and he'd be told, "You're not going to get this offer." And some guys in dark suits would be like, "You're not going to pick up this bid," and he'd go, "Nope, I'm not going to pick up this bid."
You just kind of
My
played
mother, yeah, I just went, "Fair enough, cool, have a good day." There were other times when my grandmother would just get these, she'd get these Italian cakes as like gifts.
Gifts.
And they just piled up in the freezer, yeah, as gifts. I say with quotation marks. My grandfather had a lot of like Guido-esque jewelry, like gold-plated watch, the pinky ring. So, was my family involved with the mob? Tangentially, at most.
in as much as like anyone probably has been at some point, whether they knew it or not.
My great uncle was a cop, and my mother thinks he was corrupt. So.
Oh really? Yeah.
Yeah. So he was probably more involved with the mob.
Wow. Okay.
But no, in all seriousness, like, I'm going to extrapolate what I know about Italian immigration to other countries like Australia and America is
Probably
similar
very
to
similar.
Canada. Yeah, exactly.
Although-
Which makes for it's one of those interesting populations where it's like with Ireland, where you almost have to start to think there's more like Italian Americans than there are just pure Italians.
Oh, that's really interesting. I actually don't know about the statistics of that, but I see what you mean. Like the diaspora has gotten so huge at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's more Boston Irish people than there are people in Ireland.
Yes, right, exactly. Well, part of that is famine related, like which Italy never had. Really, well, at least they had hard
The
times. But I
pasta,
don't. Yeah, right. I don't. But I
the
don't
pasta,
think
the pizza.
my Italian history could be way off on this one. If so, I'm sorry. I don't know every single bit of Italian history, but I don't think they ever went through a famine that caused that large of an exodus.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Eat the
I could,
babies.
right, but I could be entirely wrong on that.
Well, so again, it's again I know a bit more about Italian American immigration. So fun fact for you: Mario is named and called Mario because the superintendent of the building where Nintendo of America was at the time was Italian.
That's funny. That's incredible.
And his name was Mario. So that's why he's a plumber too, because he was their superintendent.
Okay. I like that. That is a fun fact. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, so what I know of Italian immigration, it seems like it probably came in mostly through Montreal, Ontario. Didn't seem to spread much further west by the looks of things.
It did, but not as much, like anything.
Yeah. Like anything. There's a little Soho in Vancouver, but it's not like a big thing, you know? Whereas like you walk through Montreal, you can still sort of really see remnants of that Italian
100%.
immigration heritage, mostly with all the different pizza places that are open. And I mean, I don't even mean this as a joke. Like this is that's great. I love it. I love my pizza.
Dude, not just in Montreal. I'm like on the cusp of Little Italy. How many freaking pizza joints do you think we have? Just next street over, we have like 5.
Yeah. Oh, especially even a place like the West Island has a bunch as well. And the West Island, I think, actually probably got a lot more of it because the West Island is that more Anglophone community in Montreal. So a lot of Italian immigration would have ended up there.
Yes and no, because a lot of them were Catholic.
Oh, true.
Also, so and French is closer to Italian than it is to English, so it wouldn't have
That's
been
true.
that.
I had an Italian barber growing up. Me and my dad used to go to the Italian barber shop. Like, it's one of those things. Like, it's all the stereotypes. But I'm like, but I did those things.
Look, it's one of those things where like stereotypes do come from somewhere at some point, even if they were grossly exaggerated to the point of racism sometimes. But yeah, like Italians make great pasta and pizza. What do you want at some point?
So
yeah.
It is an interesting one to think about as far. Same with the Irish again for immigration, because we think to ourselves, oh, they're like white adjacent. Obviously, they were fine. And it's like, no, people are assholes no matter who you are for any level of difference. Like, yes, obviously, they weren't being brought in as slaves or anything else, but they still faced their fair share of shit when they got here.
Absolutely. And part of it was due to the Catholicism bit at a time when like Protestant and Catholic was a thing. Part of it was because they were, and I'm air quoting here, the oily-skinned exotic people, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole thing. Part of it was the mafia-related thing that you were talking about. Although that was more of a thing apparently in the States, because in Canada, and we can get to this a little bit later, what seems to have happened is that we imposed certain restrictions on Italian immigration for a bit in the 20th century. by asking for their criminal record. Right? So if they had any criminal ties or any kind of past criminal history, we didn't allow them into Canada. Whereas the US didn't do that for a long time. So it made it so that the kind of perception of the criminal Italian is much more prevalent
American
in the US, right? And it was kind of imported as an image here, even if it was statistically not necessarily quite as true.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that being said, we do still have like Italian-based mafia.
Again,
here.
the risotto. Was it the risotto?
Risotto. Mm-hmm.
Risotto.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rizzuto family, if you hear me saying this.
It's not one of those things where it's like allegedly they were convicted.
Yeah, the Rizzuto family. Well, the Rizzuto family is still around.
Yeah, exactly.
The police went to them to try and get them to help out to start cracking down on like the drug trafficking in Montreal.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that you go from like, oh no, all this unorganized crime. This needs to be organized. Rizzuto families, please come back. Take back over the family business.
So, the fact that you mentioned, right, similar to the Irish, how Italians were not quite considered white or like mainstream white, it made me think. So I have a really old book called The Canadian Mosaic.
Of course you do.
Yeah, which was published originally in the late 30s, I want to say, like 1938, something like that. I could look it up right here. I have it, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It's an old-ass book. And the Canadian Mosaic at the time was mostly like the author looking at the influences of European immigrants. He completely ignores the fact that there was like any kind of Asian or Black immigration to Canada. It just like is not a thing. But anyway, it's not as racist as you would think it is, but it's still not great. But anyway, the reason why I bring up this book is that there's a whole section on Italian Canadians. And one of the, I guess, yikes moments from the book is that for every single nationality that the author covers, they actually had artist renditions of like a quote unquote type of that nationality, right? Like what does a Hungarian type look like? What does a Polish or Jewish or et cetera type look like? And here, I'll try to like put an image up of it on the notes, but this is the Italian type for you, Mac. Yeah, haughty, but also just looks like the whitest guy you know. Like I know 15 guys who look exactly like this.
100%.
Right.
But also like, and
just a few pages later, there's a historical photo that, here you go. I don't know if you can see this photo here.
Hold on. Love that. Oh my God.
Right. Just children, right? White children and two white grown men. And it says 21 races are represented in this group. I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
What?
They're so white that it's causing glare into the photo.
Again, it's what you call white, like.
And again, the book in itself is by and large fine, but it's just such a product of its time that demonstrates how people were separated up into those categories all the way back. Like, this is 1938. It's not that long ago, but it's also just before World War II, so it's not entirely surprising. But, yeah.
It's just a case of, yeah, we wouldn't think about that. And I don't know if it's because we just decided to actually focus and hate on people of other colors and ethnicities, or because like it's just so integrated as part of identity now.
It's probably a bit of both, because we hated on them for a bit. Like we can make a more structured kind of history of this, but Italians also went through internment camps, for example, during the wars, for obvious reasons. Obvious, not acceptable reasons, but reasons that are clear with historical hindsight as to why they would do that.
They're Italians and the fascists were Italian. That's why.
Exactly. We can come back to that, by the way, and like the influence of Italians on Montreal, because oh boy. So yeah, that. But also, as you're saying, like they spoke a different language. A lot of the immigrants who came in were poor or from poorer parts of Italy. So inevitably, we hated them for that.
Well, like
right?
rich people don't necessarily want to leave where they're rich.
Exactly. And also, obviously, they're going to steal our jobs. Right?
They're going to steal our jobs, run up the housing. They're just going to make everything awful. It's all their fault. It's definitely not because of the bourgeoisie.
No. Anyway, moving right along.
Moving right along. Ba-ba-dum.
No, but seriously, you can come up with probably any number of reasons, right, why that was a thing. But I would say it's a bit of both, right? Because there's been Italian immigration here, arguably since the beginning of the colonial project, right? Even if it wasn't sustained throughout this entire time, literally one of our first colonizers was John Cabot, right? Giovanni Caboto, right? Was his original name.
My name is Giovanni Caboto. I'm sorry there, friend. You're going to have to change that. Your name is John Cabot. Welcome, Mr. Cabot.
Right, but like that was all the way back. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher this. This is in the 17th century. I forget the dates in which he was actually here. Maybe 15th. No, it would have been 16th. Anyway, early colonial period. Am I going to look it up on Google? No. That's your well-researched podcast for you.
We don't have time to Google.
Sorry, 1497. Okay, I was right. So not long after Christopher Columbus. Another Italian, by the way.
Yeah. Well, it's just Italy's an important country, even though at the time Italy wasn't Italy.
No. It was just a collection of city-states.
When did Italy actually become Italy?
1870. Yeah,
that's
same year as Germany. Right. Am I correct?
1861.
1861. Okay, I was a few years off. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was the same year as Germany. I was wrong. But yeah, so it's really with the First World War that Italian immigration did become more sustained, right? But until then, it was in minor waves, right? And mostly from southern Italy, which was much more agricultural, much poorer, right? And much less industrialized than northern Italy.
Well, it's basically exactly what you want from your immigration when you're like doing a big westward expansion. Exactly. Right. And they're kind of like the forgotten workers on the railroads. So to the speak. Place with the capital of Rome didn't name them. They're not Romania. They're now Italy. Sorry, I just made that connection in my head. I'm like, man, names are stupid. But isn't that okay? I'm again. Maybe I'm going to be butchering that. Isn't that part of what the Romanian connection is, though? Isn't that actually historically legitimate, where the Romani or the Romanian people trace a connection back to the Roman Empire, and that's the connection name? Probably. But like, isn't Canada the name of like? Isn't it some indigenous word of like here or something? Yeah, subject to debate as to what exactly it is, because linguistics being what it is and writing down things in the colonial era being what it was. But yeah, there's a good claim that the first indigenous populations that were met by the French just said "a Canada," which is "you're here," or
we call this land the land, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
The deserts are all called desert. Like the lakes are called lake.
Yeah, Avon. Oh no, Avon is river. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, because a lot of Italians were leaving the poor agricultural southern Italy and Sicily, what it led to was just a bunch of migrant labor that could be used for the railroads, for rising industrialization in southern Canada. Similar to what we did, like you said, with the Irish, the Chinese, etc. The major difference is that we didn't actively export or kick out the Italians afterwards, like we did with the Chinese. So that's
we let them stay because they were just white enough.
Score one, I guess, for Canada.
They were just white enough. Okay.
Yeah. And this is a division, by the way, that you still see in Italy today. Right? Part of the reason why Italian immigration has slowed down a little bit in the 21st century is because Italy has gotten richer, right, or been part of the European Union, and so it benefits from that, right?
Well, isn't Italy part of the G8?
Ooh, I'm like 90% sure that yes, but off the top of my head,
America, not Russia, or G7, sorry, Japan, France, Germany. I think it's Italy and the UK.
Yes, it was. Yes, it is. Yeah. France, Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom, United States, and Canada. Yeah. And Russia. Yeah.
Well, it used to be Russia, but then they got kicked out.
Sure, but like at its peak, we'll say. But yeah, but you still kind of see those divisions, by the way, in Italy between the richer, more industrialized north, which is north of Rome generally, and the south, which tends to be a little bit poorer. This is like a non-exhaustive claim on my part. I've been to both broad regions, and you can still clearly see a difference in how the two developed. Right? So even if it's been slowly changing over the past 100 years, let's say, it's not quite uniform. Uniform. Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, so where was I?
Italian immigration. They were mostly farmers. They came in, lots of young men.
Yeah.
It was the old tradition of you sending money home back to the old country, back to family.
Exactly. But yeah, with the First World War, of course, everything shifted, right? And it's estimated that during the First World War and immediately after, an estimated 46,000 Italians became permanent residents. And as you mentioned earlier, that's mainly in Toronto and Montreal.
Yeah.
Which still bears that mark today, right?
100%.
Yeah. I mean, you've been to Little Italy here in Montreal, right?
Oh, isn't Little Italy Soho? Isn't that what it's supposed to be?
I don't know. Actually, I didn't think Soho was the same thing.
Anyway, but yes.
Okay. I mean, like Little Italy in Montreal, because Soho, we don't really have a Soho. What's up?
Soho is just like historic cultural districts.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like trendy shopping, dining, nightlife.
Okay. So our Soho would be like the old port, for example, here in Montreal.
I think so.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean. But yeah, I mean, Little Italy still bears the mark of a lot of that first major wave of Italian immigration. For example, if anyone, I think we've talked about this, just might have been just off the pod before, where, have you ever been to the Jean Talon station, the metro station?
Yep.
Okay. So you know there's a cultural center right there next to it, right, called Casa d'Italia. That was built right around the 1920s, right, when there was that. So that's still there from 100 years ago. There's a bunch of churches, as you said, 1 million pizza stores, 1 million shops, right? I don't know to what extent there's still a lot of like Italian descendants, right? Or Italian
Jean Talon
Canadians.
Market.
Yeah, I mean, Jean Talon Market in and of itself is the farmer's market. There's nothing specifically Italian about it, right? Except maybe a few stalls in the market itself. But
Well, it's in the Little Italy district.
yes, that's true. It is there.
And
But,
unsurprisingly, it has a really good pizza place.
yes, it does.
There's like a really good pizza stall there. It has a bunch of other stalls of like other Italian foods. There's pasta. There's some other ones.
Oh yeah, there's a few pasta stores. They're fantastic. Yeah. But yeah, so you have all kinds of things there. But something else emerged right around the First World War in Italy, which you mentioned earlier. What was that? What happened in Italy around the First World War, or just after the First World War?
Was it the famine?
No.
What were we?
Like the 1920s, some guy came to power in Italy.
Oh, Mussolini.
Hell yeah. I say with like very, very gritted teeth.
Yeah, Mussolini. And that probably really helped with the immigration because all the trains were running on time.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Everything was on schedule.
Left, right, and center. We shouldn't make fun of fascism in a time of fascism, but
No, that's how you do it because you make the fascists realize that they're stupid. You make people see how stupid they are.
Fair enough. It is a bit of an odd thing where, because of Mussolini's rise to power, you do see some restrictions at home about emigration, right? But also more people being deported for like not towing the political line, right? So, or being political prisoners and so on and so forth. So you do see people leave and flee during that time, nevertheless. I'm sorry.
You're my prisoner.
Great. So yeah, and you actually still see kind of a weird dichotomy. So that same building that I mentioned, that cultural center that's on Jean Talon Street, has a very interesting symbol on it, and people can actually look it up. It literally is carved into the walls of that cultural center, which was built in 1923. And that is the symbol of Italian fascism. Right? Like Mussolini's symbol is carved literally into a building in a Montreal street. Right? Because again, there's this kind of weird dichotomy where simultaneously people understood that he was a repressive figure, of course. I don't think anyone was not aware of that. Right? People were not that stupid. But at the same time, he did represent what a lot of Italians wanted, which was a strong person to kind of prop up this country that for so long had been considered lesser than, right? Especially as other European countries were heavily industrializing and heightening themselves on the world stage. Through imperialism, granted, so it's not the kind of heightening on the world stage that you would want, but it's all the illusion of power, isn't it? Right.
Fucking power being an illusion.
So yeah, you do see a lot of people here, a lot of Italian immigrants here, being nevertheless drawn to the figure of Mussolini, if not to the ideals of like repressive fascism necessarily. Right.
Well, isn't it also very much a matriarchal culture as well?
In what way?
Well, in that way of like the woman who stayed behind were in charge of minding the land that was left over and making a lot of the decisions and all that. The men were still sort of like, it's something you hear a lot about, again, stereotyping a little bit, but the idea of like the matriarch has this power in this way in Italian culture.
Yeah. I've heard that before. I have to admit I didn't research that much into it, so I can't say with like any kind of certainty. It's probably one of those situations where it's a home versus like public, like a private versus public thing, where a lot of the times the women would have power at home, whereas the men would have power in public. So it's probably more of a thing like that, if I had to guess, but I can't speak of it with any kind of certainty.
Of course.
Yeah. So you would have, of course, another wave of Italian immigration in the 40s, and with the Second World War. Okay, and during both of these times, you did see a crackdown on Italian communities, right? One for the fascism, right, because that's always great, and another for the intrinsic racism.
Yeah.
Okay. Of Canadian society. Yeah, exactly.
Othering and differing.
Yeah, so in the same way that Japanese people were interned during the wars, you do see similar things happening to Italians. Although I'd have to find the statistics in my notes. The number of Italians who were interned was lower. Still doesn't forgive that act. It's usually a lot of the Italians who were interned were not fascists, right? And were only interned because of the accident of their birth.
If we're we interned the fascists when they thought we were different, but now that most fascists are just white boys sitting in their mom's garage a lot of the time, we're never going to intern them. So,
yep. Gee, I wonder what's changed about why we wouldn't intern them. Anyway, maybe because they're in power also. But what you saw also during this time, aside from straight up internment, was that a lot of community organizations and storefronts were crushed or closed down, right, by government mandates, right, or actually just community, I guess, quote unquote, activism, you would call it, right? People taking matters into their own hands, right? And so, much as there were Italians here, their contributions to Canadian society were somewhat stalled during the war. I mean, it's not like there's any great cultural contribution that generally happens during a war from any kind of community, but it was particularly suppressed within Italian communities.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? But of course, that after 1945, that kind of relaunched again. And as you're saying, slowly but surely, kind of Italian communities integrated, and it's considered a very vibrant part of major cities like Toronto, Canada, Montreal, and all over the U.S., especially on the East Coast.
Well, it's really shit to say, but it helps that large parts of Italian culture are viewed in such a high, distinct way. Like the food culture, the art that is brought over from Italy. So it does give them a sort of leg up in that sort of cultural integration, because a lot of it's well, you can't say Italian art is bad because you just can't. Yeah, Leonardo da Vinci, man, he was just such a hack. He just imitated a bunch of people. He refused to share his ideas so that they would be lost to time. What a snorer. What a loser thing to be into.
Nobody goes to the opera anymore, as you know.
As Timothée Chalamet knows.
Look, it may be considered a hot take, but he's also kind of right.
100%. Yeah, so I think that is also probably part of why Italian culture had this resurgence, is because you can't, again, I'm not saying any culture is bad, but the view of Italian culture as this higher culture, it's almost like what you want to import. If you're going to have to import a culture, might as well make it the Italians.
So that's, I guess this is a really good segue, because I have a book that I wanted to talk about as a kind of case study. But I think it's a really good segue generally of what do you think culturally is the greatest impact that Italians have had on places like Canada, right, from your experience? So you mentioned food, and I would really tend to agree with that. I think that's still the most obvious one. You see tiramisu all over the place, coffee shops that have Italian names, and so on and so forth. Just go down my strip of Saint Laurent, and it's just Italian left, right, and center.
God,
and it's beautiful.
Good Italian food.
Yeah.
Prosciutto, a good prosciutto sandwich, fucking slaps.
Oh yeah, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A good
Yeah,
prosciutto sandwich on ciabatta bread. Oh, forget about it. I'm trying to think culturally because Italy as well. You can't like
Mm-hmm.
because I was talking about this with my students. We were talking about this just for whatever reason, and like the the most impressive part about the Mona Lisa isn't exactly the painting itself. It's the math. The math
Yeah.
that was required to do that painting.
Yeah,
And
it's just
the-
like structurally perfect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's structurally perfect. The use of perceptions, 3D modeling. It's just like so. Italy almost has an argument to be made that due to the way that those artists impacted the way we do art in the like the way art almost became a science or gained these sort of scientific elements to it.
Mhm.
It's crazy to think about,
Yeah, no, for sure. And you actually,
especially
to-
in a city like Montreal, which is now so well known and famous for its digital art.
yes, exactly. I mean, you can argue that it's something that we've embraced, right? Even if like not necessarily from the perspective that you're saying of the legacy of art, but you see, for example, there's not only a street, there's a park and a memorial statue. I would say about 2 blocks down from here to Dante, right? You were mentioning Dante just before recording. Like, there's a whole thing dedicated to him here, right? People embrace that as part of like a transnational heritage, if you want, right? And I think your example is really good also of like the video game and modern culture, right? Or modern visual culture being so influenced by what the Italians did.
And if
Visually.
if you really want to be technical about it and stretch it back, like, do you call the Romans Italians?
Well, look, no, because they wouldn't have considered themselves that. So it's all bullshit after a while.
But like, yeah, I don't know, man. Italy's got a lot of claims to fame, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I had another one that I brought up. Like we did
But
have
Italy,
quite
yeah,
a
again,
few.
between because like the food scene in Montreal is one of the best food scenes in the world. Like this is consistently Montreal is one of the top ranked cities in North America and globally for food. And that's also, again, very much going to be linked to Italian culture because it allows for more flavor experimentation and all that. There's the art. There's like, it just, you see the knock-on effect constantly.
Yeah. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that like there has been a literary output by Italian Canadians for a while. It really rose in the 19th century and established itself post-war, as you might assume. For example, I'm trying to find his name here. Yeah, Mario Giuliani. There you go. Who was born in 1885.
Mario Giuliani.
And died in 1964. He was actually a journalist with the Montreal newspaper La Presse for a bit, but he also wrote fiction, right? Where he wrote basically a historical fiction that was based on his experience in an internment camp, right? In Petawawa, Ontario. Right? It's called La Ville sans femmes. Sorry. And it was eventually translated in like 1994, even though it was originally published in 1945. So it took a while for it to be published in English as The City Without Women, if people want to check it out. But it's one of those texts that's a bit dicey because people have been going back and forth as to whether or not it's fascist or anti-fascist as a text.
Right.
So I don't know. Go into it with a grain of salt. I haven't had the chance to read it in its entirety yet, so I can't make a full decision on it. But I've heard that's what the discussion is. So, who's to say?
Well, I think even if you did see some form of fascism, it's kind of hard. Like that was for a lot of them their history. Like that was their current living situation. So yeah, some of their stuff's going to be influenced that way.
Of course. It's kind of hard to say that it just wasn't a thing at the time. People did believe that.
Yeah.
Right? Whether they were Italian or not, like some people did believe that. Right? Famously, Ezra Pound was a fascist, unrepentantly.
So what cultural impact do you think is the most prevalent then? The art, the food,
Yeah, I would
the
I would
religion,
definitely go with
the food?
um
That's true.
although I do think
I want cannolis now, man.
oh, I'm sure you have bagger cannolis in Charters Towers.
No, oh, I'm so sad now. Cappuccino.
Just go down the street actually after this and get myself a cannoli. Fuck.
Fuck off. Shut the fuck up. If there's one, like, that is the one thing that always drives me a bit nuts about living in this goddamn town, is the food variety. I'm a Montrealer, man. I'm used to being spoiled for food. Like, I am so used to just being absolutely spoiled. Ah!
You mean the desert is an actual food desert?
It's pubs, man. It's just beer-battered, fried fish and chips everywhere.
How you've maintained a healthy lifestyle from where you
I
are is
haven't.
beyond me.
I miss Montreal food.
You have to go soon. So I do want to still give credit to some of the cultural item that I wanted to highlight, which is a more contemporary text, but I do think gets at a lot of what we've been talking about here. It's a more contemporary text. It was published in 1991 originally. Have you ever heard of this novel, Nino Ricci's Lives of the Saints?
I feel like I have.
I wouldn't be surprised because you're more on the pulse with like contemporary works, and it was quite well received. It won the Governor General's Award when it came out.
If I haven't read it, I feel like I discussed it in one of my Canadian lit classes that I took like half a dozen of.
Funny enough, you might have actually encountered the man himself. He taught at Concordia. He taught CanLit courses at Concordia. I don't know if it. I just know that he did. I don't know at what time he did, so you might have missed him. But he has been to Concordia and taught there as well.
Well, was he a
and he taught
Montreal-based writer? No, he isn't. No.
He was born in Ontario.
Hmm.
He did his studies in Montreal.
Okay.
In Toronto, sorry.
Yes, I feel like I definitely have heard of him.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's a pretty good novel, and I do encourage readers to check it out. I actually just received a physical copy of it not that long ago. I wanted to reread it in time for this episode and didn't find the time, but I've read it way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what it is it's the story of Vittorio Innocente, which literally translates to innocent victory or victory innocent, right? Would be the name of this character. And it takes place in a rural Italian village called Valle del Sol in the 1960s. And it's basically a slice of life novel where Vittorio's mother, Christina, again, subtleties, maybe not necessarily the highest form of art in this novel, but right, Christina gets bitten by a snake as she's presumably, as the rumor mill goes, having an affair in the stable next to their home.
So she gets bitten by a snake while committing sin.
Bingo, right? So that's the basic setup of the novel, and
I've seen this guy around.
Have you really?
I feel like I have.
So
sorry, that was really all over the place.
It's fine. I feel like I've seen his face before too, but maybe it was just in passing. Anyway, so the so basically the novel revolves around the fallout of that event, right? Of her being bitten by a snake for committing a sin, and the rumor mill of the village, of the small Italian village, really kicking into high gear, right?
Mm-hmm.
People saying things about Vittorio, about Christina, about his family, or some secrets about his grandfather, who may or may not have been a fascist sympathizer. His father, who left to come to Canada, right, is conspicuously absent throughout the novel and in his life.
It's a mysterious blue-eyed man.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was he also blonde, perchance, perhaps?
I actually don't remember that bit in the novel if he was blonde, but the rumor is that he was at least blue-eyed. But it is interesting as a novel, and it's quite lyrical, I would say. There's a passage that I actually wanted to highlight that I think really captures what I'm talking about here. So this is right at the beginning of the novel, and the narrator is talking about the symbolism behind snakes. So obviously you mentioned the figure of Satan and sin, of course, being associated with snakes. But one of the interesting things that the novel does is blend Christian stories with superstition and modernity, and in a way that makes it, I think, quite engaging and contemporary.
It sounds engaging.
So this is a passage here. Snakes in Valle del Sol had long been imbued with special meaning. Some of the villagers believed that they were immortal because they could shed their skin, and at planting time, to improve their harvest, they would buy a powder made of ground snakeskins from La Strega di Belmonte and spread it over their fields. Others held that a snake crossing you from the right brought good fortune, but from the left, bad, or that a brown snake was evil while a green one was good. But there was a saying in Valle del Sol, "L'orgoglio sta, la serpe se neva." My Italian is awful, so I'm sorry. But it translates to, "Where pride is, the snake goes." And there were few who doubted that snakes, whatever their other properties, were agents of the evil eye, which the villagers feared far more than any mere Christian deity or devil, and which they guarded themselves against scrupulously, by wearing amulets of garlic or wolves' teeth, and by posting goat horns above their doorways. So I think that's kind of cool. I just like that little bit. It really captures what that village is like. Just like the pagan ideas mixed with Christian iconography, and values. It's fantastic stuff, right? And so the novel ends with Christina deciding to leave Italy with her son Vittorio, because the abuse has just gotten too much, basically, for
the abuse is too much.
Yeah, for them in the village. And yeah, it's really great because just before they leave, right, they're being basically eyed and stared at by the villagers as they depart. And Christina yells to them, and she declares that they're the ones who are dead because they do not know what it is like to be free of superstition. Which is great.
Damn.
Yeah, great stuff. I love that there is such an attachment in the novel to these past traditions, but they don't. The whole point is that they don't weigh you down.
Yeah.
Which is not the first novel to actually state this, of course, but it's a nice refresher, and it's not something that you see, I think, a lot in contemporary fiction. I think you see that more in older fiction, not as much in like late 20th and early 21st century fiction. Maybe you disagree with me, but I think it's nicely done. Yeah.
Hey, you read the book. I'll trust you.
Yeah.
I'll put my blind faith in your interpretation.
Am I your god now?
Always have been.
Thank you. That's all I want is a God-fearing Mackenzie.
A Patrick fearing Mackenzie.
Patrick, thank you. Yes, they're mutually intelligible. It's the same thing. So you just said.
I mean, you know what I think of gods anyway. I don't know if you want to be my god.
No, I do not. But yeah, I don't know. Because you have to go, this is kind of cut a little bit short, but
Yeah, we can keep going. We got 15 minutes.
yeah, the last thing I'll mention for people who are interested is that the Lives of the Saints as a book is really part of two things. Right? I want to mention the title. So, it's actually a real book, right? That exists in real life. You can read it. It's an old ass book. It's basically a series of hagiographies, and in the context of the story, it's mentioned when one of Vittorio's teachers, Zia Lucia, believes him to be godless, right? And so she begs him to read this book, The Lives of the Saints, as a way to kind of re-inspire his Catholicism and his faith in these traditions. So again, it's Ricci kind of
Well, the fact
up
that
this
she called
yeah.
it superstition at the end, she said, "Stop."
Yes,
To be free of superstitions. It's just an interesting because again, this is very much a generalization, but the way that immigration almost acts as a immigration is almost an act of atheism in a way.
Go on. Yes, good.
I know this isn't probably new theory, this is something people have probably talked about before or whatever, but I find it
it's
interesting.
relevant to the book, I think. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's relevant to the modern day as well because we have all these immigrant discussions going on, and I think even me and you agree we don't have a perfect system of immigration right now, and so it is very interesting discussion to have because it makes it very much to be an immigrant is almost to be an atheist because you are leaving your God-given community behind. You are literally eating the apple for knowledge, going somewhere else to see new things and learn new things. You are leaving your own little Garden of Eden that is your hometown community and going out into the world in a big way.
Is that an act of atheism or a faith, though?
It can be both.
Because some would argue that the Canadian dream, for example, if you want to call it that, is its own act of superstition. Right?
Well,
it requires its
trading.
own.
Well, that's just it. You might be trading one faith for another.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you can view it many different ways.
Yeah. I don't think either of us are saying that that's a bad thing either way, right? Necessarily.
Oh, God, no.
It has its power.
But never forget that a lot of immigration started as freedom from religious persecution.
Oh, yeah. That's literally the foundation of contemporary settler colonies. Which is
literally leaving their religion and God behind to start anew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or to establish a colony based off of their new faiths. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it makes for really, especially now that we're getting into what kind of wave of immigration are we at now?
Yeah. It's
7th, 8th.
Who's to say? Yeah, at this point.
I'm actually about to read a book that I'm going to end up teaching later in the year called No More Boats. It's about an Italian immigrant in Australia.
Oh, fun.
Who is now pushing back against new immigration coming in. You
mean Australia as a country or in the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, in the book, he's pushing back against a boat refugee crisis or something.
Oh, okay.
So it makes, again, it's not that interesting discussion of immigrants who then become part of the culture, become natives, as it were, then becoming anti-immigration themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do see I'm sure there's a million psychological interpretations behind this, but you see this in a lot of different contexts, right? Yeah, the most obvious example would be racial minorities who support Trump. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there is actually a few studies about
or,
that.
Or, what is it, gays for Hamas?
Yeah, exactly. Which, me, but okay. No, not really.
But it's an interesting. It's just such like it, the dissonance, I guess it would be.
Yeah, it's exactly because there is a phenomenon where you literally do not think it's going to happen to you.
Yeah. Well, it's also just
there's a
the
technical
disconnect from
term
what
for it.
it is. Like the people, because we now have a situation in America, for example. And again, this isn't me having this thought. This isn't me bringing up the thought of one of me and Patrick's favorite creators, modern creators, Lindsay Ellis, where we have anti-Semitic Zionists.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
People who are anti-Jewish but then pro-Israel. It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that aside from it is fascinating. I do really want to read that book.
Oh, you're cutting it out.
Oh, sorry. Can you?
Hold on. My face is really close now. It's zoomed in. But yeah.
I was just saying your book sounds interesting. And
Yeah,
I
no.
wanted to read it.
I'm actually really I'm very interested to get started with it. And it does make for, again, that interesting discussion, especially because, like, there's just so much going on about immigration, assimilation, colonialism, post-colonialism, neo-colonialism.
Yep.
We've got so much media about that. It's not about Italian immigration, but the film Sinners is in a lot of ways about
Irish.
cultural assimilation, the Irish are involved, obviously African people.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a conversation we're going to keep having. The immigration movement is probably one of, if not the largest movements of the 20th and 21st century.
But actually, that's a really, like, historically, this is not new, right? When
No.
you were talking, so you mentioned the Irish, but you saw this with the Italians also. The early police force, how many of them were Irish and Italians? Right?
Yeah,
Literally
that's
the
true.
forces of oppression that would have beaten them if in any other context, right? Actually, Italians were at the forefront of a lot of labor movements that were actually opposed to them in the mainstream, right? You can see this, but actually, hell, the mafia, right? You were bringing up that idea, that institution, right? Criminalized it may be, is also just like hyper capitalism. It's just illegal capitalism.
It really speaks to how we are, I think, slow, like glacially, very tectonically even, moving closer to that idea of like the one world Star Trek open border situation, because
which I'm not sure I'm for. And not in the sense of like, I do want the world peace part. That sounds great.
Yeah.
But the homogenization element sounds a bit rough.
Well, actually, with globalization already in place and such a large factor, it feels like the borders are just sort of like. But then that gets into like corporate autocracies and all that kind of other nonsense that we don't have time for.
No, we don't. And I don't want to be depressed tonight.
I'm always depressed. But hi, always depressed. I'm Mackenzie. I just think it is a fascinating conversation, and it's not one that's ever going to stop or that has an easy answer.
Yeah, absolutely. In the case of, just to segue that back really hard, in the case of the novel, they try the answer is to move to Canada in an attempt to find the father.
But see, that's the really funny part about immigration, because in almost any other problem, the solution is never to run away, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then in immigration, running away is inherently the solution.
Yeah, that's right.
You're running away from the problem is the solution.
That's right.
It's it makes for like a contradiction that I think is foundational to the problem of immigration.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're doing the one thing that you say we should never do.
But then
it's the same with the presumption of innocence in most legal proceedings now being the foundational problem to woman-based crimes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to come back to your open borders thing. The the promise or the utopian vision of open borders would solve that problem of like running away towards something else, right? But then what do you run towards? What do you aim towards? What do you strive towards as a community? In that case, if you,
baby.
Yep.
I'm
Anyway,
going to be the 1% one day.
because you have a meeting in 5 minutes, we'll cut it out there. But all that to say, open your borders and embrace Italianism.
Open your hearts. Open your hearts. Go buy yourself a cappuccino, some pizza,
Yep.
maybe some Alfredo.
Read this novel that I did not give enough credit to, but read The Lives of Saints.
Food, Canada, Italian. You know what that is? Craft dinner.
Fuck you.
Have a great day, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the episode.
All right, don't forget to subscribe to our Patreon if you want more content shooting into your ear holes about craft dinner.
Fuck, now I want craft dinner. They don't have good craft dinner in this fucking country, I swear to God.
Is it different?